Hey everybody, Dave Holmes here. In 24 years of writing about shotguns and shotgunning, I have the opportunity to review quite a few different shotguns from different manufacturers, and it's always interesting watching a new gun trying to come into the market. Obviously there's some pitfalls there. One can be the product quality, although honestly that hasn't been much of an issue. The other is marketing, and for some companies that's proven to be quite difficult. And a third one I think we don't often think about perhaps is distribution. If people can't see the guns, if they don't get out there into the public, then they probably aren't going to be too likely to buy them. It's a pretty expensive investment to do just online. But that said, I just did that a little while ago. The Yildiz ProStar was announced last year, and like many of you, I just kind of said, Turkish gun, who cares? And let it go at that, although the pictures didn't look bad at all. And then last fall, late last fall, I saw that John Yildiz was connected with the ProStar in the United States. And I've known John for 19 years. He was involved in trying to establish the Caymans in the U.S., and certainly through no fault of John's, that never did quite take off. But similar product, a Perazzi copy, and let's be honest, the ProStar is a Perazzi copy, that just didn't quite get the traction it needed. In the case of the Cayman, a lot of that came about because the exchange rate changed so much, and bingo, instead of having a huge price advantage, they became fairly closely priced at Perazzi. There were some other issues there too, and again, none of those reflect badly on John at all. So I saw John's name here and I said, this is worth looking into. I went online, and John has overcome one issue right off the bat. He has some very good dealers lined up who aggressively market on the internet, and that's good for consumers. I went online and started looking at wood because I'm just a wood kind of guy. And that may be the forte of the ProStars, built in Turkey, without, as I'll show you, all of the negatives that so many of you will associate with a Turkish-built gun, but access to all of that beautiful walnut over there. It's not free even if you're in Turkey, because the international market sets wood prices, but it's available. They know who to go to get it. So standard with the ProStar is grade 4 wood on the plain receiver guns and grade 5 wood on the engraved guns. So you get a nice stick of wood, and if you go shopping on the internet, you can pick it out. I actually found one I liked a little better than mine on a blued gun, but my perspiration eats bluing up horribly, so I went with the nickel gun. And let's take a look at some of the things that you're going to see in the package. Quickly, to get this out of the way before I forget, this is the case that the ProStar ships in. It's a composite wood glued together. Great for in the car, but if you want to take it on an airline, personally I think you're nuts. End of case. Now we can get on to the more interesting stuff. And by the way, if you think about case and you say, oh, it should come with a nice plastic case, you have to remember, whatever they put that gun in, you're paying for. And if they have to do it at the factory, you're paying the markup to the factory, because that's how business works. So to get that nice Negrini case or something you think it should be in, if it costs the factory $250, it's going to cost you $500. And let's be up front, one of the other great advantages of the Yildiz, besides the selection of wood, is the price. Standard guns retail at $4,300. Engraved guns, fully engraved guns I might add, retail at $6,300, and you can buy them for less than that if you shop around on the internet. So you combine the incredible wood with the price level, with the design, again, Perazzi design, so it's not like this is a new design coming into the market that needs to be proven, and it makes a very attractive package. Starts off with good old recoil pad. When I first saw pictures of this, I kind of rolled my eyes. It has a pebble grain surface, I suppose, to look like leather, and I thought, oh, that's going to hang up horribly, and for a guy like me that shoots a lot of low gun, that's not what you're looking for. But a very pleasant surprise when I got the gun was that the pad doesn't seem to hang up at all. I'm sure you could wear something to get it to hang up in, but it worked fine for me. One thing to be slightly aware of, if you have to change the length of pull, which is about 15 from the factory, 14 and 15/16, there's a slight radius in the pad, which might lead you to believe that correctly that there's a slight radius in the butt of the gun. So nice pad, lightweight, seems to be entirely sufficient, and I don't say that about all factory recoil pads. Let's move on to some more of the interesting stuff. This is the stock off of the grade 5, or the engraved gun that John sent me to do some photography work. And I hope you can get a bit of an idea of the character and how that color change works in there with the stripes. Again, with grading of wood, if the blanks get graded, the stocks may come out differently, so you may think this is something other than a 5, or you may see a 4 that you think is a 10, and that's up to the individual. But I can say, having this in hand, this is a pretty piece of wood, and when the gun's all together, it just looks gorgeous. I'm going to rotate this now because I want to point out a couple of things here. One, this is an MX-12 copy rather than the MX-8, so it doesn't have the removable trigger, which allows the ears to be considerably thicker. These ears are actually quite stout, and that's a good thing to see, because if you've been around guns a lot, you've seen Prozzis with cracked ears. Another issue that comes up with that is the radius on the post that goes from the top tang of the receiver to the bottom. Let me show you that. On the Yildiz, this is flat, so you get a nice tight mating surface in the stock, and recoil distribution is not put into a radius surface that continues to want to bed itself into the wood and can cause some of that cracking. So I just don't see much in the way of wood issues cropping up with this gun between the thickness of the ears of the stock and this, which I'll call a proper bedding method because I'm 110% convinced it is, that distributes the recoil equally in the stock against a flat surface, so it never gets that ability to wedge itself back into the wood as you get with the radius cut. More with the receiver later. Let's go back to the wood. Checkering is a nicely done, fairly standard pattern. I'm going to guess that this is done by laser simply because it's not got any flaws in it. It's just pretty well perfect. Adjustable comb on all the guns. The hardware is basic but adequate. No fancy lines and that sort of thing. It just moves up and down and slides sideways. It does have a little tip in it, which I quite like to see in an adjustable comb hardware, so you don't become stuck with the incline that's on the comb. You can adjust that slightly. So there you have it. I handed this to a friend of mine who has had 5 Prozzis now, I think, and he grabbed it and he says typical Prozzi grip. So that will give you an idea of the styling, although I do like this bottom line better instead of the boat paddle design. That's just a personal preference thing. And another thing that I really like over the Prozzis, Prozzi tends to cut their combs just straight through the comb nose. This bottom cut here is a flat cut. And that means if you move the comb sideways, and I always have to, that you've got the base of the comb stuck in your base of your thumb, and it just isn't that much fun. This is properly cut, and again, in my estimation, back from the comb nose, so you can move this comb sideways and you never get any interference in the hand. Nice touch, nice wood. If you can see on the butt, I'm not sure how well that'll show on the camera, but it says 38-55, so you've got 1.5 inches by 2 inches. And the drop on the comb, that leads one to suspect there might be other dimensions available, but I have not had that confirmed, so that's just a guess on my part. There is a Monte Carlo comb available, and I believe the dimensions on that are 1.5 inches parallel. On from the stock to the receiver. This is obviously the engraved gun. I hope the reflection's not too bad and you can see some of the detail in the engraving, and I'll try to put some pictures on the end of the video so you can get an up-close look at it. I want to call your attention to the machining. I've been all over this gun. I've been all over my gun. I've found no machining marks anywhere, no rub marks anywhere, nothing to indicate that there's anything improper in the tolerances here. The ProStar is built on the same kind of machinery they use in Italy to build guns. It comes from Germany and Japan, and holds the same tolerances. So if the programming is done right, the parts are going to come out with the same tolerances that you're going to have in any guns that come from anywhere. So any misconceptions about poorly fit parts and stuff, you can just put to rest. There aren't any here. See nickel plating everywhere. The EPA hasn't caught up to them in Turkey, and they're able to nickel plate stuff without getting thrown in jail for ruining the universe and that sort of thing. Typical Boss lockup, as you would expect, because it is a Perazzi copy. The engraving is everywhere. Top of the tang, all over. The only part that you can find that's plain is right here on the bottom edge of the bolster, which would be a pretty tough surface to engrave. I was a little suspect of the game scene engraving, to be honest, when I first saw pictures of the guns, but now that I have one in hand, I quite like it. The birds look like birds, not like Chernobyl chickens, and I don't say that lightly. I saw a gold inlaid gun that a dealer had just a few weeks ago on the internet, and the birds looked like Chernobyl chickens. I mean, they were definitely genetically modified organisms. These birds look good, and that carries the scene. Is it Bellino engraving? No, but it's pretty nice stuff, and it's 100% hand done. It takes an engraver a week to turn out one of these. So there's the heart of the engraved gun, which is also the heart of the plain gun, obviously. And they're just pretty. The scroll work is just exceptionally nice looking. Darkened background. You'll like it when you see it. On to the barrels. The heart of the gun. If these don't work, nothing matters. 32-inch barrels, Yildiz choke tubes, 732 bores. This set with extended tubes in weighs 1,585 grams. The engraved gun overall is 8 pounds 10.4 ounces, I believe it was. My gun was 8 pounds 6.6 ounces, I think. And I saw a shipping invoice that had the weights of a couple other guns when I got the tracking number on mine. Those were between that 8.6 figure of mine and the 10.5 or 10.6 figure here. And so I think, you know, just taking the examples that we have here, you can expect the weights to be about 8.6 to 8.10, and there's going to be the occasional outlier on either end of that depending on wood density. My barrels are 20 grams lighter for whatever reason. The engraved guns do come with a mid-rib, if that has any value to you. The front sight is a glow sticky red dot. I normally don't like those, but I can honestly say in about 3,500 rounds with my guns, I've never seen the red dot. One thing I think of note with these, and I've never seen it on another factory gun, is how close the tolerances are between the choke tubes and the barrels. We're talking the choke tube skirts only being a few thousandths larger than the bore diameter. What does that mean to you? It means the choke tubes don't get a bunch of crud blown up in them. And they seem to pattern exceptionally well, and I don't get on pattern boards and go nuts that way. I just as soon slam my hand in a car door. But the improved cylinder choke breaks targets out so far that I just kind of stand with my mouth hanging open. So you don't have in the standard package the light mod that is so popular here in the United States. You'll have, I've got a skeet in my plain choke gun. This gun came with a cylinder bore, IC, mod, improved mod, and full. And they are appropriately constricted for the choke designations. IC is 10, mod's 20. That's been quite close. And they just don't get dirty. You don't get stuff up in the threads, and the bore stays clean. Again, it's a chrome plated bore. The monoblocks cut cleanly. You can see, if you see anything there, it's a little light coat of film that came on the gun from the factory. And again, no machine marks, no file marks, no nothing. It's just clean and pretty. Lockup is quite nice. Fairly narrow rib, I forgot to mention that, but it's there, and it's not a Broadway by any stretch of the imagination. On to the forearm. I told you this was going to be an autopsy. We're looking at all the body parts. Tapered shape of the forearm that's common on Perazzis. Again, the checkering is quite nicely done. Fully engraved bore end iron. And the lockup is typical Perazzi lockup, so if it works on a Perazzi, it's going to work here. If the tolerances are good here, it's going to work just like a Perazzi. The barrel steel is 4140. They buy that from Italy, so you're getting the same steel you have in a lot of Italian guns. There is no reason these ProStars shouldn't hold up quite well, and they shoot quite well. I'll kick back to my standard gun here with the plain receiver, and you can maybe get an idea of how pretty that piece of wood is. It just really caught my eye. But it did bring out one of the characteristics that seems to be fairly common with the Yildiz stock. They come with an oil finish, and the factory says that they put 3 coats of oil on, let it dry a week between coats. I have no reason to doubt any of that, but they're not rubbing it in. So if your wood comes and it's a fairly porous piece of wood, the stock finish may not be quite the quality that you would like to see. Mine wasn't. You can see the figure and the grain and everything in this, and this was quite porous. But a little wet sanding with 1500 grit paper, and I used True Oil because I wanted a little bit of gloss to it to show that grain. So an evening, half hour an evening for a week, and you can have just a gorgeous finish on the stock to show the quality of the wood that's there. If the stock has a close poured finish, small pores, then you may be entirely happy with it out of the box. But if I had to say what's the one area maybe that these don't measure up to some of the other guns on the market, it's the wood finish. Now, speaking of the other guns on the market, how does this stack up? Are we going to claim that it's the best gun on the market? Well, that'd be kind of silly because the criteria are totally unknown to base that on. Do you include price, or do you just look at price? Is that how you grade it? Is it the engraving, which adds nothing to the qualities of the gun itself? These are nicely balanced. The engraved gun is right around the hinge pin. My standard gun was a little muzzle forward. Most people would be happy with it, but I've got short arms and rheumatoid arthritis. I'm kind of funky, so I wanted my balance point back a little bit. I had to shorten the length of pull. I put a kick ease pad on. That will add ounces to the back of the gun. And then I also added a weight in the stock. And for weights, I just use a piece of dowel rod drilled out with some lead poured in it. So if it's too heavy, drill a little lead out. If it's not heavy enough, drill the other end and pour some lead in. It's really pretty handy. It's the best system I've found in spite of all of the factory fancy stuff that's done these days. So I have 3 ounces in back, and I have the kick ease pad, and for my short arms and my puny hands, I'd never know what body I'm going to wake up with for sure every day. This balances wonderfully. Trigger pulls are good, quite decent. Could they be a little crisper? Maybe, but for a factory pull, they're pretty good. And I've got bad hands. I have trouble pulling triggers, so that's something that really is a strong point with me. If the trigger pull is bad, I've got problems I'm not going to overcome, and I don't care if the rest of the gun is gold plated. At the prices that they sell for, there's absolutely no reason these guns shouldn't run into the marketplace and just have a good time. If they sold for twice the price, then you're really starting to look around, because then you can get nitpicky because there's so many good guns out there. But, you know, in all honesty, if they didn't have the stigma of made in Turkey, which is a false stigma in this case, I don't care where you make this gun, it's a nice gun. And they were priced for what a lot of the other guns are, you'd probably just say, well, okay, it fits in, I like this better, I like that better, and you make your choice based on the features. But when you look at the prices these guns are, you look at that beautiful wood, you look at the quality of the build, and then you look at the price, and to my mind, they kind of jump out. Another note on the barrels, and this is something that really hit home with me because I have quite a background with the Zoli guns, and Zoli oven solders their barrels, keeps them from crawling because they all heat up evenly. Everything's heating up at the same rate, so there's no real reason for things to twist and such. ProStar does the same thing, so you got good barrels. I worked in a shop building muzzleloader barrels for I don't know, a couple of years, punched a lot of holes in steel and looked down a lot of bores to check them and stuff, and when I looked down the bores of the ProStar, I said, whoa, those are nice barrels, nice concentric rings, just look good start to finish. So I think their barrels will hold up. If you have a Perazzi or a Cayman and you want a set of barrels, you can get these for $1,500 instead of $5,000 or whatever it costs for a set of factory barrels. And when you look at the price differential, I think we need to recognize right off the bat that Italy is an incredibly expensive place to have employees. Kind of a socialist government there, and employers are required to do a lot of things that cost a lot of money to keep employees. So when I look at the cost differential between the ProStar and some of the Italian guns, I'm looking at the difference in labor costs. Can you imagine an Italian gun, what you would pay for engraving if it took an engraver there a week to do one action? It would be far more than the $2,000 difference in price that you have here. So I think there's a lot of savings that result in the price of the gun being as low as they are simply because labor costs are so much less. Germany is another place that's really expensive to have employees, and you know, in the United States it isn't exactly cheap, but I've had an Italian company owner tell me all the things they have to do government-wise, and employees are just really, really expensive. So you're getting the same wood from Turkey that you'd get on the other guns, from suppliers that sell to those other manufacturers. You've got Italian barrel steel, you've got Japanese and German machinery doing the cutting, and you've got a proven design in the process of design, and you've got a great price. I will tell you, stake my reputation, whatever that may be, that these guns are worth looking at. They may not be the perfect gun for you, but they will hold their own against the other guns in the marketplace. They move quite nicely, they shoot well, and they are not the Turkish gun that you've thought about in the past. When somebody wants a $600 over and under, the company will build a $600 over and under. I've heard that lament from several other companies, and I will tell you that every company in Italy thinks they can build a ProStar or a gun equal to it. But the market's not there, the demand's not there. So they build guns that they can sell. This is ProStar's step up, tongue's getting tight, step up in the marketplace. This is the good gun that they wanted to build while they were building cheaper guns that they could sell. So look them over. Check them out online. Look at the wood. Look at the reviews. If you can find an owner, talk to him. I haven't found one yet that wasn't totally happy with the gun, and I'm certainly happy with mine, which I bought at full retail. No rider discounts, no nothing. I just paid the price that they were asking for it. So, Yildiz, ProStar, good guns, good quality. Don't be afraid to give them a good hard look, and I think you'll be pleased with what you see. Talk to you later. See you at the range.